Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tanamani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nivasesha Sanyavadi Prashkati Desatarane. Om Aginatimirandasya Jana Jana Salakaya Sakshu Similatan Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Caitanya Manabhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Sayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Sa Pandantikam Vanchakalpa Turubhascha Kripa Sindhu Vaibhacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Hare Krishna. The pastime from the Srimad Bhagvatam that we're going to speak about today, tomorrow, and the next day also, is one of the earliest pastimes, or one could practically say the first pastime that's discussed in the first canto. It's going to tell the story of Sri Narada Muni and his life and how he achieved perfection. In this pastime, that's so interesting actually. His life is such a template, it's such a model, a perfect model by which we can guide our lives. But it's in some senses it's different than what we would think usually, although in some ways it is exactly what we would think. But in some ways, very important ways, it's very different. Because when we first begin chanting, or we first consider ourselves devotees, or we join in some way or another, we think life is going to be so easy. But, and then when something isn't easy, when something becomes difficult, what's going on? Oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. How are you? When something turns difficult, we tend to be surprised and think we're doing something wrong because everything hasn't gone according to our plan. But please know it for sure that the universe, and I'm sure you've all experienced this already, the universe is designed to not go according to our plan. This is the way it is designed. This is the way it works. Now, how to react to that?
I just want to make one reminder announcement about the FM, also one translation. I'll just make that once.
We interrupt this Bhagavatam class for a very important announcement. Go ahead.
भक्तों को अंग्रेजी समझ में नहीं आती 92.0 FM में हिंदी अनुवाद हो रहा है, क्योंकि आपने मोबाइल वगैरह से शुरू कर दिया 92.0 FM.
Okay. Who remembers what we were talking about? Now, this is a very difficult question. Sometimes, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll prepare you for the very difficult question I'm going to ask you. And that question will be at the beginning of class. Does anyone remember anything from yesterday's class? Does anyone remember anything that happened yesterday at all? And in fact, I found that the class could be very intense and everyone could be listening very carefully, but as soon as we hear that magic mantra of Sarira Vidyaja, then everything is forgotten. All philosophy, all everything. That is unfortunately the reality of life. But who remembers what I was just speaking about? Raise your hand though. Oh, this is one of the rules we have, is please raise your hand and don't say anything until I point towards you. Yes, Prabhu. Yes, have you noticed that? Yes, because there's an actual important purpose to that. Because this is not the spiritual world. This is not our home. And this world is designed to shake us so that we go home and we give ourselves to Krishna, and primarily that we place ourselves under Krishna's protection. Gotripte Varanam Tata. So the story of Narada Muni, the pastime of Sri Narada Muni, he narrates himself the beginning of his life, which is actually his previous life. The beginning of his life, which is actually the beginning of the pastime, which is actually his previous life. He's going to speak to Maharaj Yudhisthira. He's going to tell him what he was in his previous birth. Does anyone know Narada Muni's name in his previous birth? Yes. Upabhavana. And he was a Gandharva. Gandharva is one who sings so sweetly and so perfectly. So in the 15th chapter, and by singing, by the way, in Srila Jiva Goswami and Bhakti Sandarbha, he says this is one of the best ways, or perhaps even the best way to worship the Lord, is through music and singing. But it should be done for the Lord's pleasure, for Krishna's pleasure. Yes. So in the 15th chapter of which is the final chapter of the 7th canto, after the story of Prahlad Maharaj has been told, and the story of how Lord Nrsimhadev came to protect his boy devotee Prahlad, who was completely in love with him, who was completely dependent upon him, who knew nothing else but his Lord. After completing that pastime, and after completing the prayers that Prahlad gave to Lord Nrsimhadev, and Lord Nrsimhadev's response, affectionate response to those prayers, and then Prahlad's response to Lord Nrsimhadev's response. After repeating all these things, Maharaj Yudhisthira, after a little time, he asks, how do you achieve this consciousness? And in response to that, which is in the 11th chapter of the 7th canto, Narada Muni, Sri Narada Muni, he talks about the Varnashrama Dharma system. I mentioned this in the first of the japa classes because it starts off with practically Gurukule Vasandantam Gurohitam, Brahmacharya Gurukule. It means the purpose of education, the purpose of a young man's entering the Gurukula, or the place, or the family, or the school of the Guru, is to practice many things. He learns even Krishna did this. He learns the Vedic literatures, but essentially, the essence of what he's learning through brahmachari life is, do you know what? Yes. Yes, you remember, or you already knew that. He's learning to control his mind, and that's the purpose of obedience. That's the purpose of obedience, because if someone tells us, you should do this and you should do that, not the first thing, but very often the mind jumps up and said, no, that's not the best thing. Here's a different idea. But through obedience, and it's most easily done when a child is young, through obedience, he learns to control his mind and see the superiority of his teacher's intelligence. Because the young child doesn't have much intelligence. He's driven by just his mind's desires and his senses. So the teacher's intelligence takes the place of the child's yet undeveloped intelligence. And he learns to subordinate his mind, his sankalpa, vikalpa, his I want this and I don't want that. I don't want to go to school, I just want to eat ice cream all day long. He subordinates the desires of his mind to first the teacher's superior intelligence, and it's natural because the child is only 5 years old and the teacher is affectionate, he's kind, and he's so much more intelligent, he's learned. It's natural, and he's so much older and superior. And then gradually the teacher trains the child's intelligence, and he transfers his authority to the child's intelligence that's been trained to make and control. The mind is under control, and it's been trained, the intelligence has been trained as to fulfill the purpose of life. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada, there was one devotee in the early days who told Prabhupada that I just want to stay by your lotus feet. And Prabhupada's response, do you know the answer to that, what he responded?
I'm always walking, now will you stay?
Almost, close. But my lotus feet are always moving. That's all he said. He didn't give the purport. So what does that mean? And the way that we were always trained in the very early days of the movement was that vani, or instructions, to follow the instructions, is more important than vapu, the physical presence. But yet, that physical presence was so powerful. It was so powerful. Otherwise, why would Prabhupada have just traveled all over the world to inspire his disciples? But yet, it is the vani that is the gift. You know, I see this. Eventually, we'll get to the pastime. Don't worry. But I see this very many times. That people always, when you're a senior devotee, whether you're not advanced or advanced, but people are so respectful and they say, please give me your blessings, 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 as if the guru or Vaishnava is some kind of blessing ATM or something like that.
Multi-mercy.
Yes, but sometimes the mercy comes in instructions. And I read a purport recently that's what we were expecting, and the guru, he's ready always to give his, and you expect him to say blessings, and Prabhupada says instructions. Now that is mercy. Because this is what you can do that will bring you, what steps you can take, that will bring you to the real purpose of life. Those are the instructions. But why do we tend to want blessings? Okay, go ahead. You're a brave soul. Huh? Shortcut, like a pill. I don't have to work very hard. I just take a pill and suddenly, Radhe, Radhe. But it's not like, it really isn't like that. And I also see this as, in all relationships, including our relationship with Krishna, the problem is generally that you're always telling the other person what his duty is, or her duty is, and you're telling them what they should be doing, and they're telling you what you should be doing, and you're not doing. So you're telling them what their duty is, what their business is, and they're telling you what your business is. And no one's minding their own business. And if any of you are businessmen, you know that if you don't mind your own business, no one's going to mind your business for you. So in the Gurukula and in life, more or less what we have to learn to do is mind our business, mind our own business. And that means to understand what will be pleasing to Guru and Krishna and Vaishnavas and Prabhupada's movement. What is my duty? And we should keep our mind on our own duty, basically. And I know when I was a younger devotee, I thought it was my duty to save the world. But Krishna let me know in his own ways that definitely wasn't my duty. Yeah. So it's very important that we should fix our consciousness on doing our own duty with great devotion. With devotion, and make that our offering to Krishna. Our own, by duty I mean service. So Narada Muni in his previous life, now before Prabhu mentioned what his name was, who knows what Narada Muni's name was in his previous life? Who has learned that? Raise your hand, just raise your hand. No, just raise your hand. Just raise your hand. I just want to see who is listening. Oh, now you can just raise your hand. Don't worry, I won't call on you. That was Upabarhana. So in the 15th chapter, I was speaking about Varnashrama actually, because the chapter 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 are primarily about Varnashrama. And in that context, I mentioned what a brahmachari, why one brahmacharya gurukule vashandantan gurohitam. And then so after that, at the very end of the 15th chapter, which is the final chapter in the 7th canto. How many chapters are there in the 7th canto? Why, I did tell you just then. In the 15th chapter, which is the final chapter of the... How many chapters are there in the 7th canto? Very good. But you didn't raise your hands. Very bad. And this room has so many corners, and I can send people to the corners if they don't wait till I call on them. So, Narada Muni, at the end of the 15th chapter, he begins to tell of his previous life. And he says, long, long ago, aham purabhavam kaschid Gandharva Upabarhana. I was this long ago in a previous millennium, I was a Gandharva known as Upabarhana. Nama nate mahakalpe Gandharvanam Shushmanata. That I was respected. I was a Gandharva, and Gandharvas sing so sweetly. He was respected, even amongst the Gandharvas, he was respected by the other Gandharvas. And not only was he respected, Narada Muni says, I had a beautiful face and a pleasing, attractive bodily structure. He was beautiful, he was strong, and he was attractive, decorated with flower garlands, and he put chandan upon himself, and he was very pleasing to the women of his city. And thus he was bewildered. Why was that a bewilderment? It's because life is meant for pleasing Krishna. It's very, very, very simple. And he was always filled with desires to enjoy. In other words, he was feeling himself, he was looking at the world. He was looking at the world as if the objects of this world were indeed objects, things meant for his enjoyment. And this is what the prime thing that false ego does, ahankara, vamudapma. It bewilders us. And this is actually the gift of Maya. I've read recently in one book written, that approved by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Srila Prabhupada, he explaining how before the soul actually chooses to come to the material world, the internal energy, or perhaps it was the external energy, warns him, don't do this, don't do this. You will regret it, you will suffer. But that soul has some enmity, some envy of Krishna. And then Krishna bule se jiv anadi bahimuk. He literally turns his back on Krishna and his relationship with Krishna. So within every conditioned soul, there is such a strong tendency to not to place Krishna in the center of my life. This is what it means to be a conditioned soul. And as a result of that, the Maya Shakti, and this is as described by Kapila Muni in the 3rd canto of the Bhagavatam, the Maya Shakti places us in the material world, and the whole material world is based on the concept of false ego, which means turning our back on our relationship with Krishna, and we're given a material mind. And I like to think of the material mind, or the subtle body, or the chitta, there's so many ways to describe it, as like a bubble of consciousness, or covering our actual consciousness, polluted consciousness, mind, false ego, and intelligence. The subtle body, it covers our true identity. And because we don't want Krishna in the center, which is actually who we are, we're living in this illusory bubble. And the central point of the illusory bubble of ahankara is that I think I am the center. And this is what the material world is. It's over this more than 6 billion human beings and countless other living entities that are all thinking that I am the center, and everything that I see, everything I perceive is meant for me and my pleasure. We become so angry at a mosquito who comes, when he senses that our body is there, the mosquito just sees, your body is meant for me to suck blood from. Your existence is meant for my pleasure. And this is what false ego does to every single conditioned soul, Bhadajiv. It fills them with this mood of that I am the center and everything is meant for me and my enjoyment. Now, what a devotee's challenge, and what the whole process Srila Jiva Goswami describes in Bhakti Sindarbha, that the process of sadhana bhakti is the process of going from bahyamukh, where our back is turned to Krishna, which means our back is turned to our relationship with Krishna, and turning towards Krishna and facing our relationship with Krishna. And that relationship with Krishna is, Krishna, I am yours. I am your servant. I am yours. And when that is done by pure, perfect love, unadulterated, uncontaminated, unmixed, and which is it's a big turning for a conditioned soul. Because it's the opposite. That's what we are meant to do. That is the purifying process. And that is what life's purpose is. So we know this philosophically, otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here. But to put it into practice, we will learn how to do from Narada Muni. So he was Upabarhana, and he was very beautiful, he was strong, and he was so attractive, and he tended to be surrounded by beautiful young ladies, apsaras. And here's where the conflict begins, or the problem begins. Once, Ekada Deva Shatru Tu Gandharva Asparam Gana, that once there was a Sankirtan festival, and the Sanskrit words is Hari Gato Gatopa Upagayane. It was a festival that was meant for the glorification of Lord Hari, or Krishna. And here Prabhupada translates it as a Sankirtan festival. It is meant a festival. And this is what we are always running through in our temples, throughout the movement, is Sankirtan festivals. In other words, activities that are meant simply for the pleasure of Lord Hari. So it was an assembly of the demigods, and it was a festival to glorify the Supreme Lord. That is the purpose of our life. That is the purpose of our existence. It's so natural when we have a relationship with Krishna because he's so wonderful. So the whole festival was meant for this. In the assembly of the demigods, of the Prajapatis, and the Gandharvas, he himself, Upabarhana, and the Apsaras were invited by the Prajapatis to take part in it. Now Narada Muni again is telling his own story, how he became Narada Muni. Being invited to that festival, I also joined. But being surrounded by women, I began to musically sing the glories of the Devatas. But really, his purpose wasn't to glorify the Devatas, the demigods. His purpose, as is every conditioned soul's purpose, was to glorify himself, to place himself in the center. And he was doing this in a festival meant for the glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in a festival meant to give facilities for everyone to be engaged in a natural position of glorifying Krishna. He did something exactly the opposite. He began musically singing, surrounded by beautiful ladies. He began musically singing the glories of the Devatas. And because of this, because he had, and please listen to this point, he had a gift. He had many gifts. He could sing so sweetly. He was strong. He was beautiful. Perhaps he was greatly intelligent. And I see this with all the devotees. We just have so many gifts. And in one sense, there's this wonderful commentary by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur somewhere in the 10th canto. I can't remember exactly where. But he explains that every living entity is an individual, a unique person, a unique soul, not exactly the same as any other living entity. And that individuality means that he has a special characteristic that no one else has, like a special gift almost. He has something to offer Krishna, his individuality, that no one else has, even though there are countless, unlimited jiva souls. No one else can offer exactly what he offers, because he's an individual. And Krishna, therefore, has unlimited qualities to be able to accept the unlimited qualities of the unlimited jiva souls. So everyone, and we see this amongst the devotees who tend to be so talented, and Narada Muni certainly had his gift. But here's where the problem lies for a conditioned soul, that we tend to use our gifts not just simply to glorify Krishna, but we tend to want something out of it. And I've really seen this myself. I've noticed this when, like when money passes through one's hands, and it's so difficult to let every single paisa just go through your hands without wanting at least to keep something for me. I find it's very, very difficult. And the same thing with the offering of any gift that we have. At least let me get something out of this. This is the tendency. It's called selfishness as opposed to love for Krishna. And a conditioned soul will always tend in this direction. So therefore, in Caitanya-caritāmṛta, Mahaprabhu tells Rupa Goswami that Labha Puja Pratishtadi Yata Upasakagan, that to desire these things, even though they're not gross maybe, but maybe I want to be known as a speaker of the Bhagvatam, or maybe a wonderful kirtaniya. I can't be known. Yeah, anyway, that's another story. But there's just something, there's always a tendency to want something other than the pure pleasure of Krishna. And Narada Muni had this tendency very strongly. And Krishna is so amazing, because if whatever we desire, if we do desire this, He'll give us this. I heard this amazing lecture by Prabhupada. He was speaking in Mayapur. This was obviously quite a few years ago. And he was saying, there was some criticism of perhaps some of his godbrothers in the tone of his voice. And he was saying, if you want bricks and stones, Krishna will give you those bricks and stones. But if there's someone who wants to serve and only wants to serve Krishna, and it was clear that he was revealing the simple purity of his heart, then Krishna will give him service. And going back to that funny little joke I have about please give me your blessings, please give me your blessings, please give me your blessings. It's so rare that someone will say, please give me some service, please give me some service, please give me some service. But I've seen, and this is really true, because being an elderly fellow person and knowing many of the older devotees, I know many devotees, my dear friends who have left the movement for one reason or another. And when you ask them, what do you miss the most? They always answer, at least the ones I've asked, service. They always answer service. Service it's such a gift, and we tend to take it for granted, at least I do. It's such a gift, it's Krishna's gift. That is blessing. Instructions and service, this is blessings. Then we have an opportunity to make offerings to Krishna, to perfect our devotion. And then we have an opportunity to be humble when we see that there's not very much devotion in my heart, and unless you're merciful to me, what can I do? But here, please accept this. So Narada Muni, singing and being so beautiful and surrounded by, he was cursed by the Prajapatis. And this is what happens. When we have our gifts and don't use them properly, those things that are gifts become curses because they entangle us further in the material world. So this is a warning to myself and all of us that we should ask ourselves, well, what do I really want? I mentioned this during the japa class perhaps yesterday or the day before. I find this is an important question to ask myself. Well, what do I really want? What do I really want? And then if I very, the sincerest part of me, if it answers, well, I only want to serve you, dear Lord, dear Srila Prabhupada, then I tend to hear the reply from inside, oh really? Let's see. Let's see. So we want, so it's very important to ask this question. And that's why we read Shastra, that's why we associate with senior, more advanced souls. That's why we pray to the deities. We want to, we chant the holy names with a desire to increase our desire, to increase param drisvanavartate, to increase our desire to serve Krishna and get that taste for, or drive away all these lesser tastes. So they cursed him. They cursed Narada Muni Upabarana. Helanam sepo ojasa, because of your neglect. Because of your neglect of the purpose of your gift, the purpose of this Sankirtan festival. We curse you, yahi tvam sudratam asu. You very quickly become a Sudra. You very quickly lose whatever opulence you have. You will lose your ability to sing. You will lose your beauty. You will lose whatever it is that has made you so proud to think that you're in the center. You will lose this. This was the curse. And pride has so much to do with this, and therefore, that in Srimad Bhagvatam, Srila Sanatana Goswami, he says, Dainya and prema are the same. Humility and prema bhakti are the same. And therefore, we see that the great acharyas, the greatest of acharyas from Srila Prabhupada to Narottama Das Thakur to Kaviraj Goswami, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj, they're so humble. Sometimes Prabhupada had to act like a lion. One time, His Holiness in London in the very early days, His Holiness Trivikram Maharaj had the opportunity to massage Prabhupada, and he was massaging him, and this is what he told me, that his mood was, if there was a fighter, Prabhupada was soon going to give class or something. So when you have a fighter in your corner and you're the coach, so you massage him in between rounds and you prepare him for the next round. So he was like, go, Prabhupada, go out there and smash them and do this. You're so powerful, Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada finally said, stop. I am only a servant. He acted like a lion sometimes, but his abhiman, his mood, internal mood was, I am a servant of my Guru Maharaj. One time he said that my Guru Maharaj is like diamond or gold, and I am just the glitter. I'm just a reflection of that. So he was cursed to become a Sudra. And that was going, or not that to become a Sudra exactly, but specifically it says Sudra, but that he would lose whatever he had that he was proud of, that was causing him to deepen his entanglement in the material world. He was going to lose it. And therefore, Raghunath Das Goswami says in his Manusiksha that Sada Damba Hitva, that first of all you should give up pride. Give up pride, because every conditioned soul has so much pride. And therefore we think of ourselves central, and we're forced to live in the bubble of illusion called our material mind. But there's pride in there. There's pride. Otherwise, how could we think we're the center? So, you immediately become a Sudra, devoid of beauty. Nasta Sri. You are proud of your beauty, your Sri, your opulence. Now you will lose it all. And Krita Helena, because of your neglect of using your gift properly. Helena, neglect. And that ends Narada Muni's own description to Maharaj Yudhisthira in the 15th chapter. And then we go back to the first canto in the 5th chapter. And this brings, and then Narada Muni, he takes his birth in a very humble circumstance. He takes his birth. I was born, this is in the 5th chapter, the 23rd verse. I was born as the son of a certain maidservant. His mother was just a servant in some Brahmin like hotel, or sometimes it is said a Brahmin kule, like a school, or she was just a servant, and he was just a servant's son. But there was no finances, no wealth, no beauty, no position, just a insignificant. There's no mention of a father being there even. He didn't either know or have a father. Completely dependent upon his mother, who was completely dependent upon those who were caring for her. And there he was. Now, I wanted to bring up the first point because we also titled this little seminar about one truth, one story, four truths. So there are four truths that I want to bring up. We could have made so many truths out of this, but I've tried to keep it simple. I easily could have put in there, give up pride, give up pride. First, give up pride. And it's clear, actually, when people criticize you or me, they only know a little bit. Just imagine if you had a loudspeaker hooked up to your mind. Of course, for some of you, it wouldn't be a problem because everyone would be hearing kirtan. But for some of us, it would be very embarrassing, and we wouldn't have a friend in the world. In fact, no one would ever talk to us because no one escapes the criticisms of the mind. So that could have been another point, give up pride. No one knows better than me why I have no reason to be proud. But yet, the nature of false ego is pride. But that could have been one truth. But here we put this one, that who will be very kind to read this in a booming voice, or at least a loud voice? Okay. Yes, there we go. I knew we had the...
Truth 1. The root cause of a current suffering is difficult to discern and therefore complicated to dissolve.
So there was Narada Muni. Thank you. Well done, but don't get proud. Otherwise you'll lose your voice like me. Narada Muni had nothing. He was poor. He was dependent. So we end up in our lives in circumstances that we don't like. And we try to do so. We try to correct them. We try to correct the difficulties in our circumstances. If we're poor, we want to become wealth. If we're weak, we want to become strong. If we don't have this, we want to compensate in that way. We want to make sure we get the education that will guarantee us success in the future. But why we're in that circumstance, why we're actually in that circumstance, the cause of that difficult circumstance is very difficult to understand. You can imagine Narada Muni and his mother especially pushing him to go to IIT Kanpur or something like that. And therefore you'll be able to support me when I'm old or whatever. Who knows what people think. But it's very, very difficult to change the externals of one's fate, because we don't know the cause of the situation that we're in. Just like Narada Muni, he was cursed. He was cursed in a previous life that was the cause of the difficulties that he was facing in his current life. So we don't know what karma has caused our current difficulties. We don't know what karma, how many births ago, maybe I did something 30 or 40 or even 1,000 or 10,000 births ago that I'm suffering for. It's said in Shastra, we've probably all heard this, that if you've engaged in any cow, I don't even want to mention it, but for every hair on that cow, you have to suffer. So what is the cause of the effect that I'm now suffering from? So trying to dissolve it on a surface level, trying to change our fate on a surface level is very difficult. And what Narada Muni is going to end up doing is cure his problem, guiding him. He's going to get some great fortune that's going to guide him to perfect success. Perfect success to get at the very root of the problem, of the cause of suffering in material existence. And again, not that we shouldn't act practically, but our practical surface actions don't guarantee the happiness that or the removal of the difficulties that we so much long for. But if we get to the actual root of the problem, the ultimate cause of the problem, and yes, we should act practically, but deal with the problem on its root level, someone doing that is most intelligent, and we'll see an example of that in Narada Muni. Now, it's interesting to note that the great fortune that Narada Muni is going to experience comes in the form of a curse first, a difficulty. Because this, in one sense, is the art of spiritual life, to somehow find Krishna's mercy in all difficulties and finding Krishna in them and seeing how Krishna, and the same thing on the other side, the blessing that Narada Muni had of his beauty, his strength, his respect by everyone, his incredibly beautiful singing voice, turned out to be the cause of his curse. And the curse, on the other hand, is going to turn out to be the cause of his blessing. This is Krishna's way of dealing. No one wants curses. Everyone wants blessings. But we have to find Krishna in whatever circumstance we find ourselves in. So here is where it really starts, the fortune begins. O Muni, he's speaking to Srila Vyasadeva. Narada is continuing in the 5th chapter of the 1st canto. O Muni, in the last millennium, I was born as the son of a certain maidservant, engaged in the service of brahmanas who are following the principles of Vedanta, Vedavadinam. When they were living together during the 4 months of the rainy season, I was engaged in their personal service. Now here was a young boy, and he was the son of a maidservant, a servant lady, and he also naturally had a mood of service. And some Bhakti Vedantas had stopped at the place where his mother was serving during the Chaturmasya, the 4 months of the rainy season, and he had the opportunity to serve them, to associate with them, to serve them, although they were great exalted souls, and he was just a mere 4-year-old, 5-year-old boy, and he was serving them. Please go get this, get that. Please get this, do this, wash these plates, wash the clothes. And he was humble at this time. Sadadamba hitwa. He had nothing to be proud of. He had nothing to be proud of. And therefore, he was ready to serve in a simple way. Did anyone raise your hand if you went to engineering college? I asked this a couple of days ago. Raise your hand if you're trained as an engineer. Raise your hand if you had some other higher education. Okay. Doctors, lawyers. No one will admit to being a lawyer. Oh, yes, only one, yes. Hare Krishna, we are respectful. Bakil Sab. I'll give you some sweets after class, don't worry. Did anyone take in their higher education, or was any course offered in how to be a servant? But everyone ends up being a servant anyway. It's just unavoidable. It's just unavoidable. But Narada Muni was engaged in their personal service. And they were there in Chaturmasya, the rainy season, and during the rainy season in Chaturmasya, because it's raining and you can't travel, because of the roads are all muddy and washed out, and the rivers are swollen and flooding. And so naturally the sadhus stay in one place. This was especially the old system. And during that time, they follow very strictly rules and regulations. Now, there's a science behind this. Now, why did sadhus, especially in the old days, why did they always travel? Raise your hand if you'd like to say. Yes, Prabhu. No. That's yes, but not. You haven't taken mind reading 301 in your university days, so you don't know what I'm thinking. But you may know what I'm thinking.
So that they will not attach to a single place.
Yeah, it has to do with detachment. Because every person, especially householders, myself included, know that you move into a house, and then after a few years, you've accumulated so many things. It's such a tendency to accumulate more and more and more and more things. And there's a difference between what you want and what you actually need. And there's such a tendency to confuse what I want and what I need and try to get everything that we want without any relationship to what we actually need. But when you're a traveling sadhu, and you're walking especially, I mean, it's hard enough when you're traveling by the domestic flights and you only have 15 kilos and you're traveling. But just imagine, even if you had 15 kilos and you had to carry it on your back and you'd walk, you'd find that what you want to carry with you is very different from what you need to carry with you. And very quickly, if you are carrying the weight yourself, what you need would become very, very minimal. And I once read some little book about there was one sadhu, wasn't a devotee sadhu even, but he said, people don't understand the freedom that being a sadhu and being detached from the world gives you. Because he didn't explain any further, he just said that because you can just stand up and leave anytime, any place. And when you're tired, you can just lie down somewhere and rest, and then you can get up and you can beg a little bit of food and just keep traveling. There's so much freedom attached to that. And the more we accumulate, the less freedom we have, actually. It steals our freedom. Therefore, the brahmacharis, sometimes they have to go on traveling sankirtan and things like that, and it's very healthy, very important. Maybe the householders should also get a householder traveling sankirtan bus too and do the same thing sometimes. Maybe vanaprasthas. I knew actually many years ago a devotee who had escaped. He had left the Ukraine in Europe during a war many years ago when there was bombing and this and that, and he and all the people in his village left. And when they left, they were heading towards the west, towards Western Europe. And they all had to, just imagine you're leaving your home. Now, what are you going to take with you? You value so many things. You've accumulated so many things. What are you going to take with you? So everyone they took carts and filled their carts with the things. And they were carrying so many things. But as they were walking and walking and walking, he told me that there were so many valuable things thrown on each side of the road because they had to carry them with them. So the sadhus who traveled for 8 months of the year was so careful and so sincere and so strictly followed the Vedic principles that during the 4 months of the rainy season, when they couldn't travel, to stop them from accumulating things which would hurt their spiritual life, because we want to develop attachment for Krishna. We want to develop attachment for Krishna, for transcendence, for Krishna, not for the things of this world, which ultimately we have to give up anyway. So during those 4 months, Chaturmasya, they were very strict in following rules and regulations that would increase their attachment to Krishna and not allow them to have any material attachments. And these Bhakti Vedantas, who had stopped in the same place where Sri Narada Muni, the little boy who was 5 years old, this is about how tall a 5-year-old is, am I correct? Any owners of 5-year-olds here? Do I have it right here? Yes, okay, there's a wise householder. So little, and he was serving them. And although they were impartial by nature, those followers of Vedanta, they blessed me with their causeless mercy. He didn't have to ask them. They blessed him. He did what he was supposed to do. He did his duty. And naturally, when someone serves and forgets about their own needs and goes out of their way to serve, naturally the heart melts and affection flows down to the innocent child boy who's serving. So they were impartial by nature, but yet, what verse of the Bhagavad Gita? Vinavanaya sampane, brahmanika vidhastini. They see everyone equally, but yet they blessed him with their causeless mercy. Now, what was his mood that caused their causeless? He couldn't force them to give him their mercy because it's causeless. They can withhold it, they can give it, they can, etc. But what qualities did he have? That's what should be studied at this particular point. As far as I was concerned, what qualities did he have that attracted them to naturally give their blessings to this young boy? As far as I was concerned, I was self-controlled, and I had no attachment for sports, even though I was a boy. In addition, I was not naughty, and I did not speak more than required. And only once, by their permission, after taking their permission, I took the remnants of their food. And by so doing, all my sins were at once eradicated, and thus being engaged, I became purified in heart. Now, please listen to the next line of this verse. He became purified in heart, and because material consciousness fills with so many desires born out of the three modes of material nature, but especially the modes of passion and ignorance. Now, I have a feeling that if we open up a door back there, there'll be a little bit of air circulating, and it will make it easier for the devotees because it's already getting late. If we can open and get some air circulating, or windows or something. Now, after we finish this, I'm going to ask you if you remember anything about what we were talking about. I guess, yeah, it seems almost to be working. Do you remember what we were talking about? I was going to reveal a very important secret. Do you remember? Yes, we were talking about Narada Muni. Very good. He's the kind of soul that everyone will want to bless. He was serving them with a pure and simple heart, and his heart became purified in that service, including taking the remnants of their food. Now, what is the result of that? By this association, and by becoming purified means, practically speaking, having the desires in our hearts, born of passion and ignorance, having those desires removed. Because we struggle with those things, with those desires, but they're born of the modes of material nature, and as long as we have passion and ignorance, those desires will be there. And therefore the Krishna conscious lifestyle is basically one of sattva gun, with everything offered to Krishna, the getting up early, the diet, etc., the chanting, it's transcendental, but it's sattva gun, basically. The basic lifestyle, the cleanliness is sattva gun. So once he was purified, and in that association, and please listen, at that time, when he became purified, tadharma evatma ruchi prajayate, what was manifest in his heart was the tastes, the attractions that they had in their hearts. And this is the purpose of association with devotees. This is the goal, is that the taste, the attractions that a devotee has in his heart can be transferred by association into our heart. And according to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that is the actual bhakti lata bija. That is the seed of devotion. It is ruchi, it is a taste. It is a taste, meaning that I don't want the goal of my life to be anything of this world. It's a faith, it's shraddha, it's also said. I don't want the objects of this world to fill my consciousness, and I don't desire these things. What I desire, I want something beyond. I want to be in Goloka Vrindavan. I want to be with Krishna. I want to, it can be developed, it's developed fully ultimately. I want to serve Prabhupada's movement. I want to serve the movement of Nitai and Gaur. It's a taste. It's a taste. Because, and so there's so much mercy that we have, and we read in Nectar Devotion Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu about Panchanga Bhakti, that these items, the holy name, the exalted devotees, the Bhagavatam, the holy Dham, and Sri Vigraha, these are not of this world. When you stand in front of Sri Sri Radhaparthasarthi in the temple room, and if you stand in front of them and you're conscious, a little bit conscious, with your eyes open and your mind open, you don't feel like you're in the ordinary world with your mind doing what the mind does in the ordinary world. No. This is actually a descent. The Vigraha, the deity, Sisi Radhaparthasarthi, Gaur-Nitai, Sitaram, Lakshman, Hanuman, and Srila Prabhupada sitting there. It's a descent of the divine. We could say into this world, but we can also say the fortune is that here we are living in this bubble of my mind, which is dark, and it is illusory, and it has me in the center. It's complete illusion, it's darkness. And into that bubble comes divinity in the form of the deities. Or it comes Golokeda Premadana, the holy names enter our consciousness. Not of this world. It's from a different realm and has a different taste. Sri Vrindavan Dham. Raise your hand if you have ever been to Sri Vrindavan Dham. You've never been to Vrindavan? Huh? I thought your temple president must have been very cruel to you and not let you go to Vrindavan ever. But you thought it was a trick question. Yes, I was trying to trick you. Yeah, okay, I wasn't. I meant it in a simple way. All the tricks I'll catch you with later. But you know, when one comes to Vrindavan, it's not like you're going to what is it? Sankhet or Yeah, there's so many, I can't remember. It's been a long, I don't spend, excuse me? Nehru Place, we can say, or something like that. Where's that? What's that one by Palam? But there was Palam, it used to be the airport, and then there was Anand Vihar. Ananda Caitanya, yes, that is the one I was thinking of. So it's not like you're entering to a different realm when you go to Vrindavan. You may not, according to our advancement, we perceive it in one way or another, but no one thinks this is an ordinary place. It is like if you hold up a curtain over here and there's a light, everyone knows, you can just perceive there's some deep, sweet reality here. And I can't lift the curtain fully, perhaps, but it's there. Everyone knows this. And it's like coming through to us, and we taste that. And therefore, all the devotees in Delhi always want to go to Vrindavan. But we could have a whole another class on this, that it's not so easy to go to Vrindavan and have the curtain rise. You have to have the right consciousness for that. And another point on it is, you can experience that right when you're standing in front of our dear Radha Parthasarthi. It's not of this, they're not of this world. So the holy names, they are not of this world. Holy association of devotees, it's not of this world. The Bhagavatam. And which one did I forget just then? The Dham, the deities, the Bhagavatam, the association of devotees, and holy name Bhagavatam, yeah. So this is the light coming into the darkness of our consciousness, and it's such mercy. And what we want to do is transfer our taste, to change our taste from the illusion of self-centered illusion, born of passion and ignorance, to the taste of the divine. So, because of the purity and simplicity and the humility and the serving mood that this little boy had, and then following that, their blessings, they gave him their causeless mercy. The taste that they had for the spiritual realm entered his heart. And therefore it says, it became attractive. The very nature, tadharma, evatma, ruchi, prajayate, it manifested, it took birth by that association in his heart. And in that association, and by the mercy of those great Vedantists, I could hear them describe the attractive activities of Lord Krishna. Krishna Kata Pragayatam Tatra Vaham Krishna Kata Pragayatam. I heard them speak Krishna Kata, because that's what they were doing during the rainy season. In a very concentrated, regulated way, they were just speaking about Krishna. I could hear them describe the attractive activities of Lord Krishna, and thus, listening attentively, my taste for hearing of the personality of Godhead increased at every step. So he was getting a taste. There's a difference between and some of you may want to try this. You can, instead of chanting the 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna mantra, you can try chanting 16 rounds of Pepsi Cola, Pepsi Cola, Cola Cola, Pepsi Pepsi. I'm not really recommending you do this, but if you want to make a scientific experiment, you can try this and see if you feel happy. See if you can even do it. It's impossible, practically speaking. So, as his taste increased, as his taste increased, his attention became focused. And as that taste developed, he realized that only due to ignorance, he realized this, not heard it philosophically only, that I accepted the gross and subtle coverings as myself. And he understood and realized that he and the Lord were both eternal, transcendental. Thus, during 2 seasons, the rainy season and autumn, I had the opportunity to hear these great-souled sages constantly. This is what they did during the Chaturmasya period. They constantly chanted the unadulterated, pure glories of Lord Hari. And by that association, the flow of his own devotional service began. And the coverings of the modes of passion and ignorance vanished. He continues, I was very much attached to those sages. Naturally, he became attached to them. I was gentle in behavior. All my sins were eradicated in their service. In my heart, I had strong faith in them. I had controlled my senses, and I was strictly following them with body and mind. And here, I would just like to make this point, that when we first become interested in Krishna consciousness, we learn how to follow with our body first, and that's so important. We learn how to bow down when we walk into the temple room. We learn how to offer flowers. We learn how to put on tilak. We learn things like that. We learn the proper way to chant. We learn how to, so many things we learn. And especially this is relevant with the chanting of Krishna's holy names. But really we have to follow the example of Narada Muni here, and not just follow with our bodies, but we have to align our minds. He followed with both his body and his mind. Not only his body was doing service, but in his mind, he was also doing service. And when you're doing service in your mind also, you're keeping in mind that person who you're serving. And so often we forget. I will say this for myself. And it becomes mechanical. And we can do it mindlessly because we know how to do it. We do it every day. And this is the problem. This is a problem that often happens after a while, and then we become sort of dry. The practices can become dry because we learn how to do things with our body, but we don't connect our mind to the service and advance properly in our minds. We don't remember Krishna. We lose the mood of service, of seva. And then our work doesn't become an offering, a devotional offering, it just becomes work. And we don't want to fall into that because it's not at all satisfying to the soul. So we bring our body in line with acting properly, and then the more difficult task comes, is that we have to bring our mind involved in service. And as I was mentioning in the beginning, that there's always a tendency to want to take something. And so, what do I really want? That question becomes more and more relevant. And if I really want to love Krishna, if I really want to live in Goloka Vrindavan, then we have to move our mind in that direction. And that can be a struggle because of the habits that the mind has developed. And therefore, for the first 2 days we were talking about chanting japa, at least listening to the holy name and making the attempt to align the mind with the physical activity of the moving the beads and the chanting. And the prayer, allow me to serve you, bringing the mind involved. Serve you, Krishna, bringing Krishna involved into the process. That it's service, it's seva, it's devotional service. We want to bring our minds into this process. So he was strictly following them, strictly with body and mind. Now he's ideal, he's a Mahajana. And we hold up his example before us as something that we make our strong attempt to follow. But then the Chatamasya ended month by month. The first month passed, and then which month passed next? I know you know the answer to this one. Which month passed?
Second.
Yes. And then after that? And then the fourth month was coming to its close. And they were going to leave. They had completely changed his life. They had by their association and by his service, they had changed his life in this. His life in one sense was just the same. Externally it was just the same. When people would come he was the son of the maidservant, so he would serve them just like, externally it was the same. But what had changed was something internal. His taste, his desire, what he wanted had changed completely. He was no longer the same. And Prabhupada explains this in his purport, that after initiation we should change. And indeed, Narada Muni changed. Please think about this point. His taste, what he wanted, changed. It shifted from matter to spirit. What was in their heart transferred into his heart. And the 4 months ended. And as they were leaving, they had already given him everything, but they wanted to give him something else too. Those Bhaktivedantas, Jnanam Guyatamam Yattad, Sakshad Bhagavatotamam Ditam, that they decided to give him the same knowledge, the same instructions that the Supreme Lord himself had spoken. Why did they decide to do this? On one level, because he was so qualified, but on another level, because Kripaya, Dina, Vatsala, because they were naturally very kind to the poor and to the meek, to those who are humble. Naturally, they who are equal to all living entities were kind, and their kindness took the form of giving him instructions that by following those instructions, he perfected his life. And tomorrow, we shall speak about those instructions. Thank you very much, because it's not early, and you are listening very attentively, even though it's not easy. So thank you very much for that. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. What is your good name?
Nandalal Ishwar Das.
What a nice name. Where did you get such a nice name?
Guru Maharaj, his name is Subha Krishna Maharaj.
Wow, such a nice name, such a nice Guru Maharaj. Yes, Prabhu.
First of all, thank you so much, Prabhuji, for explaining that this universe is not designed. It's designed actually to prove that our desires will not actually come true. We have to face difficulties here to come back to God.
Do you believe that?
Yes, I could feel it. Actually, lowered my burden because every time there is a struggle that why things are not going as per my own plan.
Have you noticed? How old are you?
Sorry.
How old are you?
My age
How
is
old?
29.
29. Have you noticed that the universe doesn't cooperate with you?
Yes. Because I'm always making so many plans in
Yeah.
mind, but things are not going exactly as per I was.
Exactly, but generally they go as according to your plans. We should put you in charge of Delhi traffic. If you can make things generally go according to your